processed food waste only, and we actually run two of those and we've designed two of those. Just remember that Germany may be ahead in those stakes there, but the UK is definitely, in my view, ahead in the area of digesting food waste only. And here's an example of a biogas plant in North Aberdeenshire where food waste and slaughterhouse waste is co-digested with pig slurry, and that plant it's a very successful plant, has been operating for 6 years now, just to show you the sort of versatility of things. And in the UK, my view is, come to a conclusion here, Chairman, is that there are going to be two types of plant in the UK. There's going to be on-farm plant, which will be processing materials which mainly arise on the farm. And these are plants which will require not such rigorous permitting issues, light touch from the Environment Agency, and they will then operate within the farm environment, not taking in food waste, for example. But the other type of plant is going to be the commercial food waste digester, which will be by necessity much larger because the permitting issues are so much more challenging, because we have to make sure that these plants are absolutely biosecure. And so these plants, by nature, they have to be much bigger. And we're talking here about projects where the capital cost is £10 million plus now for these sorts of large food waste digesters. I think we're going to see a divergence of a type of anaerobic digestion plant built in the UK, and I hope that will be part of our debate today. Just to conclude today, anaerobic digestion is here because it's a low carbon process. It may then move to being a resource management process. That element may change. And I want to leave you with two perhaps thought-provoking slides, just to show how anaerobic digestion moves on. The slide on the left shows a lady in India, and you wonder what she's got on her back. Well, of course, she's got a bag of biogas on her back. And where's it come from? She has a biogas plant at home, and so she's got surplus biogas, and she's now taking that to market, to sell in the market. This is the way that the market develops. So she's no longer collecting firewood, she's actually now selling biogas. The second one is Delhi. In Delhi, there are no public sector diesel vehicles. They were enlightened in Delhi. They're way ahead of us. They're way ahead of London. They said no to diesel vehicles because of the atmosphere in Delhi was so horrendous. So they have now gone to CNG in Delhi. And even the little tuk-tuk taxis run on CNG, compressed natural gas. And some of them now run on biomethane, because CNG and biomethane are the same thing. One is biomethane, it's come from a recent biological source. The CNG has come from a very, very old biological source. And what we should be doing is we should be using CNG as the bridge to biomethane. We should stop this nonsense of a GLA going for hydrogen vehicles. So, because they haven't count the CO2. Where's the CO2 in that whole cycle? It's gone somewhere else, it doesn't matter to them. And there's nonsense about electric vehicles, because electric vehicles are there for personal vehicles. They're not there for public sector vehicles. Thank you very much.
Well, now, there's nothing like the image of India to see how far others have gone, and I must say the change in the atmosphere in Delhi since they've done that has been enormously worthwhile, and it shows what can be done even in a non-command economy. Now, we have been running over time, and what I'm going to do is to have a very, very quick session just with the two speakers. If there are any urgent questions that people want to ask, we'll do that now, and we'll do it very quickly. In the meantime, I should say that would Eden Stroud, Keith Smith, Basildon Green Forum report to the registration desk. I'm not sure what you've done wrong, but I go there because Matron wants to have a word. Now, can we just have the two speakers just up here very quickly? Are there any urgent questions that people want to ask, things that they haven't really understood or want to... Now, there are four of them, that's all that's going to get it. That one there, and that one there. Can we have the questions all together, and then we'll do the answers? Are we going to get it done? Please. Will you shout, please?
Sorry, a question for Michael. As you're aware, we've had a few odour issues. I wonder what's happened in terms of the technology front to reduce the odour from digestate and spread on
Yeah, right, that's odour issues. First one. Next one for the gentleman there.
Cheers. Hello, Glyn Lee from East of England
He's got a louder
Cooperative
voice,
Society. With the food waste, how's the technology moving on with depackaging? Because that seems to be the major barrier with food waste.
Thank you. Packaging of food waste. There was another one there, the gentleman there with the moustache.
You mentioned financial incentives, Alex, but in fact what we're faced with at the moment, the last government introduced feed-in tariffs, firm, committed, and suddenly we've got a review of them. It's no longer firm and committed. I can name 3 banks that flatly don't believe the government.
Right, last question from the gentleman there who wanted to ask a question but put his hand down politely, therefore deserves a question. Can you... Yes, will you shout it out? You've got a good enough voice to shout out.
Yes, indeed. Using John Gummer's opening word, concern, when is the Environment Agency going to get its act together about a light touch in planning and fermenting? Because I've had an absolute nightmare.
Right. Well, now those are 4 really good questions. So shall we start with what I'd call the technical questions to ask our second speaker. Michael, would you like to answer?
Okay, sure. On the odour issue, yes, there have been issues because we've been pioneering in the UK the anaerobic digestion of food waste only. There have been issues with respect to the product, but these issues have now been overcome. And it's particularly, from a technical point of view, it's down to the levels of volatile fatty acids in the digestate. And there was a time when, in the early days of developing this technology, there were quite high residual VFAs within the digestate. That's now been overcome. We now have very low levels of VFAs in the digestate, and so the odour issue is, as it were, going away. But we do take this we take this very. We don't take this at all lightly, because obviously the way that an anaerobic digestion sits within the local community is absolutely critical, and so that is that is a technical thing which has been now overcome. The question on depackaging, if we look at depackaging, there's 2 types of food waste coming into an anaerobic digester, which is a food waste digester. The first is going to be curbside food waste, which is coming from households. We find our experience is that the quality of that food waste is excellent, particularly if the right methodology is in place for the collection of that food waste. As you saw the example with the cornstarch bags, the kitchen caddies, and weekly kitchen collection, we find in that situation that households are very, very diligent about their food waste collection. We get high capture rates and also get very, very low levels of contamination. So, for example, in the biocycle plant in Ludlow, where it's only curbside food waste coming to that plant, there is no depackaging technology required there because the food waste coming to that is so clean. But if you look at C&I waste, commercial industrial waste, there's 2 types of commercial industrial waste. There's what we call loose commercial industrial waste, which is similar to the curbside waste. For that, there's no depackaging required. But obviously then the final part of it is there is packaged waste coming from supermarkets, etc., where technology is required for depackaging. And from a commercial point of view, then that plant I showed you the last slide, the 45,000 tonne plant near Northampton, that includes extensive depackaging equipment. So they're taking the packaging off supermarket waste, and that is also working very well.
Well, thank you very much. Now the 2 tough questions for the official.
Thank you very much. I'm going to take the last question first about the Environment Agency. Obviously I can't comment on your particular case, but all the work that I've seen done on the regulation work stream that we have, people came up with some barriers that they felt they had seen in either their own particular planning issues or that they'd heard from other people. And I think a lot of those barriers in fact turned out to be more perceived barriers than actual barriers. And I know Howard is here because I've seen him in the audience.
If I could, it would help you to know 3 identical applications in 3 counties. One office said they were frightened about digestate, the other office said they were worried about feedstock, the third authority said they were perfectly happy, and then 21 weeks later they were frightened about the slurry tank. They haven't got a clue between them, and they don't actually need upskilling, they actually need to be pressed to do a lot better, if I may use your words. So, absolutely.
As I say, I've seen Howard in the audience, and I'm sure he'll talk later on about regulation, and you can go and badger him all you like. I'm offering him up for you later.
He's just disappeared.
But no, as I say, all the work that I've seen in the working groups, I think there were a number of perceived barriers, and that the way that the Environment Agency, or Howard's area particularly, has been working with people, that there are possibilities to overcome them. As I can't answer your particular case, I'm sorry. On the financial incentives in general, I think if I were looking at the financial incentives now, personally, I wouldn't want to see 3 different individual incentive schemes. They seem to drive different models, whether it be on heat or on electricity, and that then tends to give you a different anaerobic digestion model. From my own AD side of it, I think it would be better if we had just one scheme, which was either looking at nutrient management or carbon reduction. I agree with you, the way that they're running at the moment, operating at the moment, they may be a little confusing, and it depends which area, and particularly if you're a rural or an urban type AD operator, depends again which scheme you go into.
Right, well, thank you very much. I'm just going to have 2 last words. The first is that the Environment Agency does have to get its act together, and it is no good saying that just there's been these discussions and the rest of it. In the end, it's what happens on the ground. And the Environment Agency is now much better run from the top. Chris Smith is a huge improvement. As a former Labour Minister, I want to say he really is first rate. There's a bit of trouble in between. And that's what we've got to get right, and we've got to have an answer that really is helpful, which starts off from saying, yes, we want you to do it, rather than starts off as saying, gosh, we'd better find some reason for you not doing it. And that is a very real issue, which we've got to win. The second thing is, you cannot get away from the fact that the way in which the government dealt with the manifest overspending on photovoltaics has in fact caused very considerable worry in the industry. And it has got to find a way of recovering that confidence if banks are going to lend. And there is no way out of this except government action and very, very clear commitments. Now, the fact is, of course, they haven't gone back on their word, but there were people on the way of development for things which they expected to be able to do on the original arrangements. And that was not properly taken into account. And I think there is a real issue here, and I hope that you will go away at your level and every other level, make sure that people understand this is not something that can just be swept under the carpet. Now then, I remind those who have to go and see Matron, and I'd also say we're going to come back here, please, before 10 past, otherwise we won't keep up with the time. So before 10 past, everybody's sitting tidily and noiselessly in their seats. Thank you very much.